Unsupermarket.
Welcome everybody to another podcast, Unsupermarket.
And who will Jordan be interviewing this week, Leigh?
We have a fifth generation cattle farmer by the name of Brad Johnson. He is raising Angus breeders in the lush meadows of Mount George and Gloucester on the mid-north coast. Box Divvy currently offer their meat to hubs in Sydney, Central Coast and the ACT.
And every week we say to ourselves, what's for dinner?
That word, meal planning. 2 words actually. Sometimes it's an immediate thought. Ideally, we all like to plan ahead.
And I guess it depends on the time you have and how many people you're planning for, and maybe even what stage of life you're at. And I've been thinking about this actually, and I came up with a number of ways that people can think about meal planning. But the question is, which meal planner are you, Leigh?
Absolutely. So there's pure family chaos, there's organised chaos, and there's also the plenty of time to indulge in the kitchen, which can still be chaos.
First one I came up with is open sesame. Open the cupboard and say, what do I have in the cupboard or the fridge to cook a meal? And I read the recipe maybe, and then I put it aside and cook. And of course I have to substitute some ingredients where I need to. The second one I thought about is a recipe weekly planner. I have a recipe and I will purchase all the ingredients and follow it. I like to plan every meal and then I make sure I have the ingredients, so I don't have to think about it or duck out to the shops for something. The third one, which could possibly be you, is a meal prep ahead of time for every meal. And then every night I cook up the meals as needed. Might be that I might even do bulk cooking and then freeze. So perhaps I just have to add vegetables. And I might say, right, this week I'm going to have all the mince base done so I can make tacos, lasagna, burgers, soup, etc. The third one I thought about, ingredient prep cooker. Chopping up the celery, chopping up the mushrooms. So all the chopping's done, all the hard work's done. So which one are you, Leigh?
Well, I think you're right, Jane. I think I'm a bit of a combination of number 3 and number 4. I love to slow cook, so I love to buy something like the big bulk brisket or the pork Boston butt, and then either overnight in a really low oven or through the day. I tend to slow cook, and then I've got meat ready to make 2 or 3, sometimes 4 meals. I usually get a few lunches out of the meat as well, but it's just always on hand, ready to go. I do actually love a bit of open sesame though. Like when usually the night before Divvy Day, I just love to go, right, what do we need to use up?
And what do you think meal planners have in common?
I think that they think through what to cook. I think that they make lists of what to cook and the ingredients required. They usually create a shopping list and they can check what they've already got at home and then what they need to buy, talking about what they need to use up to be reducing waste. It actually doesn't take as long as you think to do a little meal prep. I prep a meal a day, basically. So while I'm doing dinner, I also put the next meal on for the next night. And did you know, Jane, at Box Divvy, the members can be all meal planners using the shopping list feature.
You can shop for the things exactly what you want. So I might want every week 2 cucumbers, 3 tomatoes, 1 pumpkin, 6 brushed potatoes, and I can put which week I want to have that appear.
And you can also list a favourite recipe, Jane, and then basically build the shopping list that you need for that favourite recipe. And the week that you're going to cook that, you just can automatically populate it into your shopping list.
Like last week we had the masala dal bake, so you could put that in. Or you might want to create your favourite fixed box. So box 1 might just be all fruit, box 2 might be all vegetables, box 3 might be mixed. Summer vegetable fruit mix or a winter. But if you do that, you do need to log in and make absolutely sure that seasonality is in place so that it actually is there for you to get. So, it might be that you put blueberries in and they've disappeared. So you do need to check that. And again, you can choose which weeks you want these boxes to appear. And then you can log in, adapt them, take things out, put things in.
Check the prices too, so that if it spikes, you can take it out. You can do the same thing with the pantry, Jane. So I know myself, I keep a pretty staple, pantry, and I generally know that every fortnight you can create a week 1 and a week 2 list. I know every second week I need tin tomatoes and coconut cream, but you can also build that in to shopping lists and just populate it when you need it.
Yep, and you can do chills. So Sydney, ACT and some parts of New South Wales are offered chill. So seafood, meat, and you might have a barbecue pack, a seafood pack, a mixed, cheap cuts pack, and you can adapt it by subtracting and adding as you need to.
The shopping lists are there to help all members be meal planners with Box Divvy. Now we have Jordan, our roving story gatherer. He went to visit Brad Johnson, as I mentioned before, on his beautiful Mount George farm.
This is a beautiful farm. I've been there. It's about 30 minutes from Taree, which is north of Sydney in New South Wales.
How you going, Brad?
Yeah, very well. Good, mate. Good to have you here to have a look at the place. We're Gloucester Grass Fed Meats. We're sort of 5th-generation farming. So we've been doing this for quite a long time. We started doing our boxes probably 5 years ago and joined up with Box Divvy a couple of years ago, which has been great. Love the network, love the family support that you get from Box Divvy. So we've expanded here to Mount George, where we've got 105 breeders on this place. We've got 35 breeders in the Gloucester, the area. We sort of have expanded that. Originally drovers, which went out west to Wellington, Dubbo, Overley, that area. So, and then our family moved to Gloucester probably 20 years ago. It's just in our blood, I think. That's what we enjoy doing. So when you look around and you can see the space that you've got, it's a pretty special place to have. We've got an island down the bottom there, which is, had 600 mil of silt over the top of it. So that's very productive down the bottom there. Here, as you can see, it's sort of river flats. We had 8 metres of water here through the floods. You can see that where I'm standing was water. That's how deep. When you look down there, you can see how deep it is. When we had our flash floods, some days we can't even get over to the island. Like, I've taken cattle over there before and then I've gone to bring them back. I couldn't get back, so I had to leave the machinery over there and swim back. So it can go up pretty quick, up and down. So, you've just got to make sure that, and a lot of our water here comes from the Barrington and Gloucester rivers. So we've got, fresh water, which is great for all the cattle. The cattle really do well. You can look at them, they're doing really well. So, we're pretty happy up here.
So you've got a pretty reliable source of water throughout the year?
So we've actually just implemented another 7 new troughs around the paddocks just to make sure that the cattle have got all fresh water. So, done all the research, looked at what that helps produce better quality beef, and that's what we're after here. We're after fresh water, which does make a massive difference to growth. And obviously the meat quality. So I've got cameras set up throughout the property on all the water troughs, so at least I know that they've got feed and I know that the pumps are working. So I've sort of
you can keep a good eye on that way, right?
Yeah, so I can monitor it full time. 24 hours a day really. So
how do you go about breeding?
I put the bull there.
Is there a time and season that
I generally since we're generally as a farm production, what we do is we put them in from the bull from 1st of September to Christmas. But since we're producing beef the whole year, what we need to do is keep the bulls and the whole cycle. So, but having to supply beef each week, what we need to do is pretty much we'll run the bull out with the herd the whole year.
So, right. How do you go assessing genetics?
It can go on a lot of different factors. It goes on birth. It'll go on, how much the bodies weigh at 200, 400, 600 days, the IMF percentages. So that's a massive factor. And also mature cow weight. We sort of look at our cows, we want them to end up about 550 kilos. So they're not too big. What we look for with our Angus cows is an IMF, which is your muscular fat inside that meat. So having that is such an important factor in making sure that you have got your breed plan right to make sure that the beef is better. So it's not just any run-of-the-mill old cow that you need to sort of use. You need to make sure that your genetics are proper for the job that we're looking. So we actually, there's not many people that do what we do, like breed them and then sell them. Most farmers will just sell them at the local sale yards, and that'll be the end of their sale. So they really won't know what the quality and feedback of their beef is like. And that's the good thing about what we've got. We know that, the beef hasn't been sitting there for a week. It's cut up. The butcher cuts it up. I pick it up on the way back through. So the local lab's 15 minutes down the road. So I load them in my own truck. I yard them. There's no stress. I don't use dogs to yard them. So if I take my 2 bodies in or whatever it might be for the orders for the week, I know they're not going to be stressed. So there's not going to be any dark cutters as such in the beef. And that's really what you need. You want to make sure the cattle are happy, not stressed. And that's what we do here.
So is that something that you would say when you get your meat is, what did you call
dark cutter, yeah.
Dark
so basically it's stress while you're loading it, while you're carting it and doing all that. It does affect the beef quality. So
Okay. What does that look like in meat?
they call it a dark cutter. So basically the beef goes a dark colour, so we get processed. So that's why I use the local abattoir up here, because I know that how they do it is right.
What do you do when your cows get injured or they may get sick? You have to call in a vet?
Yeah, there's local
bring
vets
it to
which are
town?
on hand, which is good. So
Yeah.
I put them in a yard up near the paddock up near the yard, so that means they're nice getting on. I've actually just had 3 cows that had sore feet last week, so we've actually got them close to the house and close to the yard. So if they need retreatment, that's an easy thing for us to do and keep an eye on. So we put a lot of effort into making sure that that none of our cattle have ill health.
You're quite famous for your cut of meat, the tomahawks.
Yeah, we love our Viking tomahawks, always been a favourite. One of the first ones we processed was 2.2 kilos. So I cooked it up, it looked a treat. So I put it on my partner's plate and said, there you go. And she said, I'm not going to eat all that. And I said, that's all I needed to hear. So, they're certainly, having that bone through the beef when you cook it certainly makes a massive difference to the flavour. And
Brad, what's the best way to cook your tomahawks?
I reckon the best way is a reverse sear. So what we say is pat the meat down, season it, make sure it's room temperature, so leave it out for a couple of hours before you need to cook it. Turn the oven on to probably 135 degrees, put it in the oven for 35 minutes. If you've got a thermometer, the best way is to make sure, depending on how you want it, medium rare, well done. But pretty much, 135 degrees for 35 minutes, then I pull it out, let it sit for 15 minutes, and then fire up the barbecue and wait till the barbecue's smoking hot. Put the tomahawk on, put a dab of butter on it, and just sear it for probably 2 minutes either side, and you can't go wrong. Yeah. And you'll thoroughly enjoy it.
Another question. Have you seen anything spooky while you've been out on the property?
Neighbours.
Neighbours.
No bunyip.
No bunyips.
No, maybe. No, is that recording?
As Brad says, Leigh, about cattle farming, I guess it's in our blood. It is so much more involved than you think in cattle farming.
Yeah, absolutely. And great tips on cooking too from Brad.
I smell a very delicious dinner. Could it be Sarah from Hornsby whisking away with a beef ragu pasta bake? Let's join her.
So today I'm going to show you how to make one of my absolute go-to weeknight dinners, a beef ragu pasta bake. Now, a couple of wonderful things about this dish. One is that you can get a lot of the prep done in advance. So if you've got a busy afternoon right before dinner time, you can actually get a lot of the work done at other pockets during the day. Another thing that's wonderful about this is that it's a great meal for getting a lot of red meat for not much money. This meal is fantastic because it only uses about $10 worth of beef. And the way that you can get away with that is because it's just a really cheap cut of beef. So I've got some gravy beef here. You can also use chuck steak. So the chuck steak on Box Divvy is wonderful. It's a bulk cut, and you actually get you could use that cut to make 4 lots of this dish. So I'm just going to take my my beef, and you just sort of want to roughly chop it into about 3 centimetre-ish cubes. Now you don't have to cut off any of the gristle or the fat, because we're going to use a pressure cooker or in a Dutch oven that you pop into the oven for a few hours. So I've got an onion, I've got a couple of carrots, and I've got a few sticks of celery. Now I'm just going to chop up my vegetables into nice small pieces. You really want them diced so that they also just sort of disintegrate into the stew. Now again, with these, you don't want big chunks of carrot or celery in this. So what I'm going to do is just halve it, cut it into quarters and slice those. Just to show you, we do exactly the same thing with the celery. Just break off the leaves. The thicker part, I'll just cut it in half down here and then slice it up nice and thin. I'm also going to just chop up my garlic nice and fine. So my pressure cooker has a saute function. If you're cooking in one that doesn't, or you're using a slow cooker that doesn't have a saute function, you can just do this first part in a fry pan on the stove. But I've got my pressure cooker on, so I'm just going to add a couple of glugs of olive oil. And I'm going to saute the onions first until they just get a little bit soft. Once you've been sauteing the onions for a couple of minutes and they're nice and soft, then I'm just going to throw in the garlic. Have a little stir around. And now we're going to add all of our meat, and we want to just brown it all on the outside. So browning it just seals in all the beautiful juices and flavours. Okay. All right, so once that's pretty much all nice and brown, just going to add in all of my veggies. And again, we just give it a bit of a stir. Once that's all been sauteing for a few minutes and the carrots and celery are getting a little bit soft, we're going to add our herbs. And we're going to just deglaze the pan, and especially if you're cooking this in a fry pan on the stove, if you didn't have the saute function, we're going to use our red wine just to get all the beautiful flavour off the bottom of the pan. So just pour all of that in, and then just use your wooden spoon to sort of scrape along the bottom to make sure that you get all of that beautiful flavour. All right, now we just throw in our tin of diced tomatoes and beef stock powder. So I've got 2 teaspoons of beef stock powder here, but you can also use a stock cube or 2 if you prefer. Just going to pop that in. Okay, and now we are ready to pressure cook. So if you're doing it in a slow cooker, you can just slow cook it for 6 to 8 hours. Or if you're doing it in a Dutch oven, you can pop it in the oven for, I'd say, about 4 hours on 150. We really want the meat to be just absolutely falling apart for this dish. So I'm going to switch my function to pressure cook. And I'm going to put it on high on my pressure cooker for about 45 minutes, which is quite a long time, but it's really what we want in order to get that meat to just absolutely fall apart. Okay, so now we just leave it to cook, and we'll come back to it a bit later. My pressure cooker has finished and I've released all the steam. You want to use a pretty strong wooden spoon. Just squash all the pieces of meat against the side of the pressure cooker so that they just sort of all fall apart into tiny strands. You can use 2 forks to shred it, but if the inside of your pressure cooker or slow cooker is non-stick, you probably don't want to do that. And actually, I find that this is a bit faster and easier. While I was releasing the steam from my pressure cooker, I also cooked all my pasta. And you really don't want to overcook the pasta because we're going to mix it in with this sauce and put it back in the oven. And you don't want your pasta to be so overcooked that it all falls to pieces. Now, I've also I've mixed up my flour. I've used flour, but you can also use corn flour if you're doing gluten-free, with a bit of water into a paste. And I'm just going to tip that in and stir it in, and that's just going to thicken it up and make it like a lovely sort of thick, soupy stew. This is also a good point just to taste test it and see if you want to add any more salt or pepper. Usually if you've used good quality stock, you probably don't need to add much salt, especially too because we're going to put cheese on top. Okay, so I've cooked my pasta and I'm going to just pop that into a baking dish now. And then I'm going to put some of my lovely beef ragu on top. We're going to coat it, like to sprinkle all of this mozzarella cheese over the top. Then we're going to pop it in the oven at about 180 and just bake it for 15 or 20 minutes until all of that cheese is melted and brown. It's now finished in the oven. The cheese is beautifully browned. I've got some nice steamed greens ready to serve it up for dinner. And here we have just some ultimate comfort food. Everyone in my household loves it. Yeah, enjoy.
Oh, steamed greens. I love them.
Good time of year for fresh beans too, Jane.
Well, listeners, that's it for our 5th episode, and we hope you've enjoyed it and learnt something too about our food system.
Remember to like and subscribe.
Do share our podcast with your friends.
Until next time.
I'm not counting this time, Leigh, when we have to say together, unsupermarket.
Unsupermarket. Woo!
Unsupermarket.